Hi and welcome. How do you take your leave in Tibetan? So if you're finished a ceremony and you're leaving the temple, or if you're just meeting with friends in a restaurant and you're ready to go and you want to say, okay, I've got to go now. I'm going now is tanda now, ta, tanda, la ta ta ta. Whoops. Yes, la ta ta ta. Nga, dro, au kara ta ta naru, dro, yi, yagigu yi, and then yin, ya gigu yi na yin. So this is an introduction to a few things. So tanda is now. Tanda, as you'll hear, there's a bit of nasalization that happens in the central dialect here. Tata, you'll tend to hear an N sound before a T like that. Nga, I. Dro is to go. And the dro yi yin, sometimes you'll often see it as dro gi yin, just to simplify things for um, modern writing. But if you follow correct Tibetan grammar, because this doesn't have a suffix, it's actually a yi. So anyway, if you don't need to get too confused, but just so you know. So tanda nga dro yi yin. So this construction dro yi yin, this is essentially go will. The two together, dro yi yin. Yi yin is kind of the combined I will do something. The nga here is I, and will do something in the future, or will go in the future, or I am going in a general sense. It's often used that way. So tanda nga droyin. Now I'm going, or now I'm going to go. In English, you can say it either way. It's the same idea. And the person might answer you, oh, just a regular oh, and say kutsering, kutsering. Whoops. Sa kataka shabkyuku, body. Okay. Tsering. Nope, wrong. Ta ringbu tse ra giguri nga ring. Tsering, lifelong. Long. So O, body, lifelong. Long life. It's just saying long life. It's a handy way to say take care. Take care. I guess it's the way, maybe the easiest way to translate it in English. Take care. Kutsering. Sometimes you'll just hear tsering. Long life, no problem. Same idea. Another way to take your leave. What's another way to take your leave? Another way is to say, see you tomorrow if you're going to see the person the next day. So tomorrow is sang, sanga sang. Nya giguni na nin, sang nin is tomorrow. Sang nin. Gel, gel. Mao cha la gel is to meet. And then yo ya naru yo nga yong, and then you put the she. So again, a couple of new things here. Sanyin tomorrow, gel to meet, and yong is to come. And you'll notice that before I put the she after this, I put another tick. So the grammar rule is to prevent confusion between the ka and the nga she, right? Because they look very similar, especially if somebody's using their handwriting. The convention is to, after a nga, then before a she, you put a dot so that it's extra clear that it is not a final ka. So which we talked about in an earlier video. So like if it's an end of a line, there's no problem if this is left alone. But for sure, if you have a nga and then a she, you're going to put a tek in between to just so that it's not visually confusing with the ka. That's a good thing to keep in mind. Now, the next sort of layer of information I'm going to present to you now is, because surely as if you've done already some studying of Tibetan, you have encountered this issue. If not yet, then I'm now advising you that Tibetan, just like English and any other language, we have different registers of speech. So in the same way that you would not talk to, let's say, your friend's grandmother with the same vocabulary that you would use with, your best friend at high school, you wouldn't use the same expressions with them as you would with somebody who is, more sensitive or needs to be shown more respect for you to get along with them in a positive way. So in the same way in Tibetan, you have a number of levels of this kind of what are called honorifics and even humilifics. So you have honorifics, which are used for people who are elevated in status, social status, religious role status, just your parents, grandparents. And then humilifics often are used for yourself. You try not to overblow your own ego, so you use the simple forms for yourself, humilifics. So you in English we use humiliation to be a very negative thing, but it's not humiliation in the sense of putting somebody down in a negative way. It's just um, being humble. Humility is the same thing as humbleness. So being humble about your status, not trying to mm, promote yourself as some great person. We all, we know that we all have our flaws. So this is just sort of a general thing in Tibetan. And to make it even, well, slightly less complicated is that not all dialects have these complex honorifics, but you will note that it's mainly the central dialect, which is the most kind of typically studied in the West, that has these honorifics. So it's really key to be able to at least recognize them when you hear them. If you don't get the hang of using them right away, people will probably they'll be helpful. They'll try to correct you when you use the wrong word, just as we would. I mean, if somebody uses a very vulgar, a coarse word when, a more polite, civilized word is more appropriate, we would tell them. And so it's a little bit in the same style that a Tibetan will likely correct you just to say, oh, that's the wrong context to use that word in. So don't take offense. It's just they're trying to be helpful. Well, obviously on a case by case basis, but in general, that's how I would approach this kind of situation. Okay, so all of that to say, this version here, Sangin Jel Yong, Jel is the honorific version. So this is the one where you're speaking to your friend's grandmother and she's, a nice lady. You want to make sure that she feels respected when you speak to her. Whereas if you're just speaking to your buddy, your friend, a close friend, or even your teenage daughter or son, for example, you have a much more familiar tone and no need. Or if you're talking about yourself for some reason, then you would change it and you would use the word tug. So, sang, nin, tomorrow, tug, tug, yong. So they both mean exactly the same thing. Tomorrow, we will meet tomorrow, or they don't even say we in this case. Like we'll just say, yong literally means to come. So the situation will come to meet tomorrow. It's like the very bare minimum information that you need to give. You're not even speaking about who will meet tomorrow, so you don't even have. If you study Buddhism, then you understand a little bit that you really avoid using the self in any context if you can. It's not necessary, but it's also just a habit. So it will come that we will meet, that there will be a meeting tomorrow, something like this. So we'll meet, see you tomorrow. In English, we would just simply say see you tomorrow. Sanyin Jaeyong, honorific. Sanyin Tugyong, regular, or yeah, just regular language. Between friends or between equals. Another thing you might say, okay, so just let's review here. So we had tanda nga droyiyin, I'm gonna go now. O kutsering, take care. Sanyin jeyong, it's a polite see you tomorrow. Sanyin tugyong, it's a regular see you tomorrow. Then you can say jela jeyong, ra jata ja, dengbu je, sa je, la. Jeyong or tugyong, we can use either one. Jela jeyong will be polite here. Jela jel yong. And that's just, instead of saying see you tomorrow, see you later. Jela is later. See you later. See you later. And again, it's just, it will come a meeting later. A meeting will come later, or something like this. You can think of it that way. And then you start to see how Tibetan is constructed. You can then, when you start learning your new vocabulary, you can build on that. So we mentioned that dawa, dawa means moon or month. Sa, lata, da, wa, ra, jata, ja, dengu, je, sa, je, ma, la, whoops, mao, ja, la, jel, yong. So what is this guy? This is month, next, jema, la, in or at, jel, yong. So it will come, a meeting in next month. So we'll meet next month. See you next month. We will meet next month. See you next month. Tawa jema la jeong. Tawa jema la jeong. Tawa jema la jeong. If you're saying good night to the person, like, and they're going to sleep, another thing that you probably will hear is sim. Oops. Sim. Kausa kikusi ma sim. Ao ja ma jam. Kau na nga nang. And for good measure, you can add go. So sim, sleep, honorific sleep. Jam is like soft, close. Nang, do, honorific do. And go is kind of like a final stop, full stop, period particle. So in English, you would just say sleep tight. Sleep well, sleep tight. This is kind of the sleep softly, but we don't really say that in English. Sleep soundly, but sleep tight is probably the closest equivalent in English. And the go is, like I say, it's just sort of a full stop. If you want, you can just say simjam nang, and it works the same thing. You don't need the go at the end. So let's just look at these again. Tananga droyiyin, o kutsering, sanyin jeong, jemala jeong, or jela jeong, dawa jemala jeong, and then simjam namgo. I hope you will find this useful. Have a listen again if you need to.